Good afternoon, Trump's family. Hope you having a great weekend and God bless you. Alright, let's get into the news. With a huge ruling of the Supreme Court yesterday regarding the Second Amendment, where it was in regard to concealed carry. And in these states, this was a New York law that was being challenged in the Supreme Court, where they said that the New York state law was you had to prove that you needed protection in order to carry a firearm, and against that. And of course, that went against our constitutional rights to bear arms. And that's what the court recognized. What a 6-3 decision that came down yesterday that left millions of lefties across the country reeling into the air yesterday because of that ruling. Well, in typical fashion, the NYC Mayor Eric Adams, and of course, the DOJ-led regime by Biden, has refused to recognize the new or the Supreme Court decision on this, reversing all of these unconstitutional gun laws in cities and states across the country. And they're going to work to undermine it from moving forward here. So let's get into get court's goodness. It is course disarming you and making abortion on demand available all the way up until birth, until even afterwards, if you are unsatisfied with the child that you have now. That's what their stated goals would be, right? Well, just as Thomas sat there and nuked all of them with his ruling, expressing on the majority, talking about how it's our God-given right under the Constitution to be able to protect ourselves, not just at home, but when we're out and about as well. Protections for us does not end at our property line. We can defend ourselves wherever we are. That is our God-given right. That is the right given to us under the Constitution of the United States, which recognized through ourselves in WEOF. Now you have to sue them. You have to do whatever you can. But there's just more legal things. There's been that precedent that's been set. However, Democrats refuse to recognize this law because they don't agree with it. And every single time they don't agree with something, they will find a way to get around it. The binding DOJ has already stated that they are going to find ways in order to support these cities and states who have these gun regulations in place. And of course, they tried to use the tragedies in Buffalo and Uvalde, Texas, in order to justify this, because that's all they're able to do. They use emotion in order to manipulate public opinion. And hopefully they can manipulate the justices with that type of emotion. That's what they've been trying to do. And of course, that didn't work in the Supreme Court. They said, no, we're looking at the letter of the law. We're not looking at your emotions. And so the NYC Mayor Adams, they're stating that he isn't going to recognize it in New York City, and of course DOJ saying the same thing. So it's going to be interesting how we move forward, because there's another big ruling. That will probably happen later today, or next week, which is the Roe V Wade ruling, which divided DOJ. I did a story on that already this week, talking about how they are going to work to try to find ways to undermine the ruling if it doesn't go the way they want. This is what this regime does. This is what they always do. This is what this pot dictators do. They find ways around the law in order to satisfy their minions, satisfy their base in their ideology, and they'll do whatever it takes. And next news was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Alright, what you heard there was Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. today, as he delivered his remarks following the historic Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which was leaked back in February but was made official today. He, as you heard, lashed out at President Trump for Gorsuch, Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, who joined the other conservative justices. And I'll get to later in this episode, I'll get to Justice Roberts and what his stance actually was on this. In the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I want to share with you what President Trump said. Liz Wheeler tweets out, Trump says when asked whether he played a role in SCOTUS overturning Roe since he nominated 3 justices, quote, God made the decision. President Trump giving glory to God for the decision to appoint those 3 justices, which has led to the reversal of Roe versus Wade. Also, this is his official statement today from Save America. Today's decision, which is the biggest win for life in a generation, along with other decisions that have been announced recently, were only made possible because I delivered everything as promised, including nominating and getting 3 highly respected and strong constitutionalists confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. It was my great honor to do so. I do not cater to the radical left Democrats. Their partners in the fake news media are the rhinos, who are likewise the true but silent enemy of the people. These major victories prove that even though the radical left is doing everything in their power to destroy our country, your rights are being protected. The country is being defended, and there's still hope and time to save America. I will never stop fighting for the great people of our nation. Thank you, President Trump. God bless America, and God bless and protect the justices. Alright, we're going to talk about the important details of the Supreme Court decision. We're going to talk about what's happening in several states. We're going to talk about what's going on in Congress, including yet another bill passing in Congress that's going to head over to Biden's desk for signature, plus there's another huge decision and ruling by the Supreme Court. That is also very big. Granted, not as big as overturning Roe v. Wade, that is getting lost in the shuffle. Today is a momentous day. The United States Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. Individual states will now decide how each will address the issue. Alright, we have mentioned this before. We want to make sure that everyone is clear on what happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It throws it back to the states to decide whether they are going to allow this practice or they're going to eradicate this practice. So let me tell you what's going on in the different states. Okay, so we have what I just played for you as Missouri Attorney General, Eric Schmitt. And he signed a proclamation ending the practice in his state. He had other things to say, but I'm not going to play it for you because this platform is very strange. And I want to make sure we get this information out to you. In Tennessee, the Attorney General has filed a motion to end the practice. In the state of Tennessee immediately, Tennessee, I may not have to consider along with Texas and Florida. Given what's going on, and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has announced that the practice is illegal in Texas. It will no longer be illegal in Texas come very soon. The practice will be illegal in Texas. But when that takes effect is still unknown, said Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Moments after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, leaving the practice and up to the states. In 2021, Texas passed a trigger law, the Human Life Protection Act, which would restrict the practice within 30 days of any House High Court ruling giving states the authority to outlaw it. Anyone who performs or helps provide the procedure will be charged with a first-degree felony and $100,000 penalty. The exact day of the prohibition goes into effect in the Lone Star State is still not known, said Paxton. According to Texas, ABC affiliate Paxton allowed state workers the day off in response to today's ruling. He packs to say that he's looking forward to defending the laws of Texas. This is very similar to what happened in Tennessee, which currently also has a trigger law that is said to be enacted 30 days after the ruling. So what is the response from the left? Well, we have here that busloads of riot police have headed to the Supreme Court. There are snipers on the roofs and they're getting ready for another summer of love from the left. Okay. I want to play you the audio of it. Obviously we know that the lives of the justices are being threatened because of the imagery, and here I'm going to play you the audio put out by the Judicial Network about stopping the violence against our justices. Once again, that sounds like insurrection. Talk to me when you disparage and downplay, and call for disobedience against one of the branches of government. Okay, let me get into the other great Supreme Court ruling that happened here, or it's just a great but it's a big one, depending on where you stand on this. The Supreme Court issued a ruling in Vega v. Taco, a case involving the administration of Miranda rights, with a court ruling that a suspect's words or statements can be used in court regardless of the Miranda rights. So here's the background. Terrence Tico worked as a patient transporter in a hospital in LA after a patient accused him of sexual assault. Hospital staff report the allegations to the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Deputy Carlos Vega went to the hospital to ask ticket questions and take those statements. Although the parties described vastly different accounts of the nature of the interaction between Taco and Vega, it is undisputed that Vega did not advise to go of his Miranda rights before questioning him or taking his statement. Taylor was arrested and charged in California state court, but a jury returned a verdict of not guilty following the acquittal of the criminal charge. Taco sued Vega, alleging that Vega violated Techo's Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination by taking his statement without first advising him of his Miranda rights. Justice Samuel Alito issued his ruling account of 6-3, deciding that using such statements outside of Miranda rights is not a violation of a defendant's rights and does not give them the right to sue the court for such use. Random prescribed a specific and protective set of warnings to ensure that criminally accused suspects were made aware of the Fifth Amendment's decree that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Miranda is also one of the court's most culturally famous decisions. Americans know Miranda, more accurate, Americans know that Miranda warnings if they cannot recite the lyrics to the national anthem, or the Pledge of Allegiance, they can recite the veranda's warnings: you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to a lawyer. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. So more people know that the Miranda rights probably from television and courtroom dramas than they know the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay. So generally, if the police obtain a suspect's statement violating Miranda, the government cannot use that statement against the defendant in court. But can the defendant leader sue the police for violating the defendant's constitutional rights? The Supreme Court now has said no. So very specifically, they cannot sue them. If they are not made aware of the police, the defendants can't sue the police. If the police do not let them remind them of their constitutional rights or their Miranda rights, the ruling brings into question the future or Miranda rights. Essentially, the ruling implies that any conversation coerced or voluntary taken in the absence of Miranda can be used against the defendant in a court of law. The ruling is a threat to the Fifth Amendment, which states that no person shall be compared and compelled in any criminal case to be witnessed against themselves, and also permits a person to refuse to testify against himself. Now, this is what Alito said in the ruling. Randa did not hold that a violation of the rules is established necessarily. Okay, Random did not hold that a violation of the rules established necessarily constitute a Fifth Amendment violation, and it's difficult to see how it could have been held otherwise. So they can't sue for not having the Miranda rights, and Alito was saying that the Miranda rights does not necessarily constitute a Fifth Amendment violation. In referring to Miranda, Alito said at no point in the opinion of the court state that a violation of its new rules constituted a violation of the Fifth Amendment right against compelled self-incrimination. In other words, if you're not Mirandized doesn't mean that your Fifth Amendment rights to self-incrimination have been violated. He went on to clarify that Miranda court stated quite clearly that the Constitution did not itself require adherence to any particular solution for the inherent compulsion of the interrogation process. And this decision, quote, in no way created a constitutional straitjacket. So Alito ruled ultimately, quote, because a violation of Miranda is not itself a violation of the Fifth Amendment. There is no justification for expanding Miranda. So confer a right to sue. So you don't have a right to sue. But you can see the Alito said a lot in that decision that Miranda does not necessarily not being Mirandized, or having your Miranda rights does not necessarily violate your Fifth Amendment right to not self-incriminate. Wow, Miranda rights downgraded to Miranda suggestions. In other words, the right of Miranda appears to be eroding before us. And that is a huge deal. So the left is calling it that it's laid the groundwork for direct blow to the right against self-incrimination. These are very interesting and fluid times. We've got more news for you here. The House has gone and passed the bill, the gun control bill. All right. So Congress, the House of Representatives, passed the most extensive federal gun restrictions in decades today, sending it to Biden's desk for signature. Now, as discussed here, the Senate had passed a $13 billion legislation and sent that to the House late yesterday with the 6,533 votes. We had 15 rhinos, to thank for siding with the Democrats on this. The House approved it today. As you can see, by a margin of 234 to 193. With 14 Republicans joining all Democrats to vote yay. Now the package includes extra funding for states that enact red flag laws. In other words, the Fed is bribing the states. Isn't that funny how the states all of a sudden have power over something? But the states don't have power over Roe v. Wade. Inconsistency in your brain makes you a liberal leftists. Now Biden is anxious to sign the bill, but we know that he's going to do this. Here are the 15 Republicans on the Senate side. We need to call them out. And then I'm going to call out the Republicans who voted on the House side. The fitting Senate Republicans who cross party lines with minor Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senators Richard Burr, Shelley Moore Capito, Bill Cassidy, Susan Collins, John Cornyn, Joni Ernst, Lindsey Graham, Lisa Murkowski, Rockport, Maine, Mitt Romney, Tom Tillis, Pat Toomey, Todd Young and Roy Blunt. The House Republicans who voted Representatives John Katko, Fred Upton, Brian Fitzpatrick, Maria Elvira Salazar, Steve Chabot, Michael R. Turner, David Joyce, Anthony Gonzalez, Peter Mayer, and Adam Kinzinger. And that was obviously some good news for Nancy Pelosi. Speaking of Nancy Pelosi, of her husband, Paul, officially charged by Napa County, he faces up to 5 years in jail. And we have some new reporting. Was someone else in the car when Paul Pelosi his vehicle crashed? Very interesting. This is what we know. Thanks to 100 is Fed Up. Why don't 100% Fed Up reported publicity to the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was charged on Thursday with DUI with injury by the Napa County District Attorney's Office. However, after listening to the information, there are a lot of unanswered questions. The charges filed today include driving under the influence of alcohol causing injury and driving with .08. He actually had .082% blood alcohol content. He was released on bail for $5,000. Later the day, and that was revealed that Pelosi was involved in a car accident. He went past the stop sign in his Porsche near the town of Yountville in Napa County. He was trying to get on State Route 29 and it was hit by a Jeep, causing police to respond to the scene. It was reported he was leaving a dinner at a friend's home in a Democratic donor about 6 miles from the Pelosi home. It's reported that he may have had someone in the car with him. And this is probably why they are not releasing the body cam footage. They're not REAP or the dashcam footage. Looks like Fox News and others are going to be suing to get that. There's no reason why it shouldn't be turned over. Oh, except for liberal privilege. Okay. The plot is thickening on Paul Pelosi. Qui allegedly had a passenger in the car coming home from a party. Well, Nancy on the other coast. California, there the DIA is withholding dashcam and police reports. Fox News is taking this to court. Okay, folks, let me end with this. Ending where we started about what is going to happen with Roe v. Wade being overturned. 13 states in the country are poised to enact immediate bans, and at least 13 more could quickly follow suit after the overturning today. 13 states have the trigger laws, which says that as soon as Roe v. Wade is overturned, it would nullify and ban the practice in those states immediately or within a few weeks. Okay, so the states that have this are Idaho, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah and Wyoming. They've all passed trigger laws. Wyoming being the latest one, having done that back in April. There were also 5 additional states, Alabama, Arizona, Michigan, West Virginia and Wisconsin, that still have on their books the ban of the practice that was overruled by Roe v. Wade, and 73, who are now going to go back to the banning of that practice. Okay. Now the Democratic governors of Michigan and Wisconsin have pushed back against those laws that were previously on the books. But so far, Alabama, Arizona and West Virginia have not gotten pushed back. So they would go back to the laws that were superseded by Roe v. Wade. But now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, they can go back to their laws of banning the practice. Michigan has had the law since 1931. Wisconsin has added since 1849. Making it a felony, but their respective states are fighting back against it. So that means that the overturning of Roe v. Wade in at least 18 states pretty much bans the practice immediately. Now there's 4 additional states, Georgia, Iowa, Ohio and South Carolina, that all have laws banning after the 6-week mark, which were previously set up to be unconstitutional, but will now have to be revisited now that Roe has been overturned. Now, Florida, Indiana, Montana and Nebraska appear likely based on current legislative efforts to move to ban or severely restrict the press practice. Okay, so I'm looking at moving to Texas or Florida in the next year or so. And Texas is winning out here because Texas has straight out said within 30 days most likely that it'll be no longer practice. Florida is going to limit it, but we don't know where it's going yet. So in other words, 26 of 50 states are certain to likely or certain are likely to ban the practice now that the Roe has been overturned. The Center for Reproductive Rights counts 25 states as likely to ban it, including North Carolina and Pennsylvania, but they don't think that Florida, Iowa, or Montana will. But some believe that the states will severely limited access is expected to continue, even expand in blue states like California and Oregon. So there you go, folks, pray for your states and pray for the safety of justice. The Supreme Court justices, by the way, Justice Roberts, who sided with the other conservative justices in the ruling, has he filed a separate ruling saying that he was for that particular ruling, but not for the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So it's really 6-3 in that specific case. But he did not agree with Alito on overturning Roe v. Wade as a whole. Thank you very much. WWG1WGA